Bench Opinions. Three idiots with amateur analysis.
Welcome to another episode of Bench Opinions, everyone. I'm joined by Dominic Klaus. I'm Max. Rugby is the only sport where people are excited about the international break. Not like football.
Yeah, that's true. Definitely.
Yeah.
Although I'm getting less unexcited about URC is very good.
URC is really...
It's coming on leaps and bounds, or at least my interest is.
Yeah. I was thinking the same thing this morning, and I was like, maybe it's just my deep dive into a little bit more than just how the Storm is doing. But it's turning into a really nice competition. We're going to dive into some of the URC results in a bit, but we're going to start with the Jan Hendrik Wessels ban, because that's dominated news headlines in the last week or so. Discuss that, as I said, and go through the URC results, look at the URC table. We're going to give a little bit of a prediction after 5 games, who we think are going to qualify for the top 8 and who's going to win the tournament. And then we're going to close off with a look at the international fixtures this weekend, specifically with Ireland taking on New Zealand and England taking on Australia, the 2 big games this weekend. Right, let's get into the nitty-gritty. Spoiler alert. This is going to fall onto the side of what the fuck's going on. Why has Jan Hendrik Wessels been banned for nine weeks?
As you would say in South Africa, a totally tossle.
Yeah. I think it would make sense for me just to summarize what happened before we debate.
Go for it.
Okay. So, Connacht versus the Bulls. Ruck in the 18th minute. Murphy and Wessels, Murphy from Connacht, are involved in a ruck. Murphy alleges that Wessels grabbed and twisted his testicles, and obviously that provoked a reaction. I think he sort of open hand tried to hit him. Looked like
I don't think it was much of an open hand. It looked like a
yeah.
It was more like
a
a
beating from the top.
It looked like he connected. Obviously,
two strikes.
The ref and the TMO looked at it. They couldn't find conclusive evidence of the testicle grab, so they sent Murphy for a 20-minute red card for his retaliation. After the game, the citing officer who was present at the game claims he saw the offense from the sideline and cited Wessels, which means that you are no longer innocent until proven guilty. There's now guilt.
Guilty till proven innocent.
Yeah, you need to go to a citing commission and you need to prove your innocence. Wessels made the argument that it was accidental contact, not foul play. And he was trying to, I guess, put his hand down to free his leg, because they were saying that his hand made an unnatural movement in a ruck. Him and his lawyer also said they flagged inconsistencies and gaps in evidence. The video evidence didn't match Murphy's account of what he said happened. There was no medical or physical evidence of anything happening to said testicles, and
So they're still intact.
citing commissioner.
No blue balls.
Yeah,
That's actually quite witty. Anyway,
Well
carry on.
done.
the citing commissioner claims he was about 20 meters from the incident, which him and his lawyer also questioned. Anyways, the citing commission believed Murphy's account, said it was way more credible, clear, and detailed, and the totality of evidence proved that Murphy's reaction, the commissioner's observation, and the unnatural hand movement by Wessels proved that he's guilty. I believe that the maximum ban for this is 12 weeks, and they gave him a reduction because he hasn't had any prior
Good behavior.
Yeah, it's getting let out early for good behavior.
Exactly.
He's missing 9 weeks. That includes Springbok games, URC games, and the Bulls Champions Cup games. Rassie Erasmus is fuming. Right, that's what happened. Let's discuss. Klaus.
The first thing you have to state is that if he did that, or if anybody does that on a rugby field, that is a horrible foul play. You don't do that.
Pretty sure it happens at amateur rugby, like a little bit. You know?
We're not talking about amateur
Okay.
rugby. We're not watching fucking.
Low-hanging fruits, as they say, you know.
Yeah. So if it is true, if he did indeed do that, that's a big no-go. The problem is the lack of evidence, and it's he said, she said. Nobody really
Yeah, I mean, it's,
Nobody really saw anything. Josh Murphy is claiming something. Jan Hendrik Wessels is obviously claiming the opposite, or not the opposite necessarily, but he's saying like I didn't do exactly what he said. And the citing commissioner is a load of bollocks. You can't tell me that you can. He says he was sitting 20 meters away. If you actually look at where they normally sit, which is in the press box, there's no ways he could be 20 meters. They weren't even less than 20 meters in field. They were more than 20 meters in field. So unless this guy is sitting on the pitch, which he obviously wasn't, there's no ways it's 20 meters. So
added to the fact that there's like there's
a rock
jungle,
and there's people in front of
Yeah.
it. So he's saying he's got clear sight of it, which is bullshit. That's nonsense. So it's the equivalent of if anybody of you is watching on your phone, put your phone down and then walk 5 meters away and then see if you can see this. And you probably can't. So that's the problem. And then the other issue is that it is I've lost my train of thought. I'm so riled up right now.
Listen, I think we have to try and compartmentalize. I think the first thing is the way South African fans here have reacted is as if the URC there's been a massive conspiracy by the URC and the commissions in the URC against South African teams.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. No. So relax. You maybe need to separate here World Rugby from URC, etc. That's my first point. It's been
there's definitely
it's unbelievable. It just seems overboard, the reaction generally.
But that's what we're famous for.
That's true, but still, I'm trying to be rational, fucking carte blanche at this shit here.
Yeah.
Then the second thing is, I think it's something we've spoken a lot about in rugby generally. I always thought it was particularly World Rugby's problem, but it seems to now have bled into the URC. How bad the whole implementation of rule systems is. This whole thing, as you said, has been a balls up from start to finish. Initially they said we can't release any information. That was another good one. Actually.
I know, that's why I was
going to
laughing.
say, if you're going to make testicle jokes the entire podcast, then we can stop right here.
That
was a happy coincidence.
That was a Freudian slip. Anyway, and so it's been an absolute mess. And I think if you look at also all the situations, like no, we can't release any more. We can't release any more details of the citing hearing, but then stuff gets leaked to say that no, there weren't any more videos. Then there was even further things where people have gotten information about. Apparently, Jan Hendrik Wessels had to also do the whole thing in English, and people saying that even his ability to express himself and explain the situation would have hampered his own case.
Yeah.
So I think it's a thread, a common thread that goes throughout rugby that no one seems to can really be able to get right. Is how do we manage large moments of uproar in rugby, and how do we deal with it in a way that fans come out the other side and say, okay. And then this brings me to my third point. If you look at the video, the main video that's going around, I do believe that there is some sort of unnatural something that happens in that situation.
I think,
and I don't know if it was on purpose.
Yeah.
I think Murphy's reaction, if you look at it, is extremely like impulsive,
telling, yeah,
and it does make me think something's been touched there that shouldn't usually be touched. If it was done on purpose, I don't know. But it still sucks to have your nuts grabbed or touched in any way, particularly involuntarily. So I think saying that there's no video evidence of Jan Hendrik Wessels' hands on his genitalia. 100%, I agree with you. But to say there's no evidence at all that something goes on there is wrong.
But he's not claiming that.
And then my final point is Murphy. Retaliation is an extremely important part of this game. If he's been grabbed by the nuts or not, I don't care. The fact that he comes off scot-free from that, from his reaction, literally striking a player twice on the head, because otherwise, what we can open Pandora's box then, because that means if anyone does anything to you, can start swinging at him on a rugby field, and if you can prove that they did something first or there was foul play first, it's open season. So I think throughout this whole thing, it's actually blown something way out of proportion.
Yeah.
The biggest portion of the blame, I think, for this uproar is on the URC and the commission.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. The question is not whether he did or did not touch his genitals, because I do think he did, and he did say so in his defense. He says he may have inadvertently put his hand there, but it wasn't with intent. So the question is, what was the intent?
My point on no video evidence, and it was more of the fans. The fans particularly are saying how if it's not on video, it didn't happen, and I think that's also problematic.
Yeah. And there, I guess one would have to consider his past, and he's not He's not someone who is never mind the testicles. He's not generally a foul play player. It doesn't fall foul of the law.
But then that brings up an interesting question as to how these things are adjudicated, because at the end of the day, it was an Irish commission, from what I understood.
Welsh. All four of them were Welsh, and that's another big problem. Is like there's no diversity in that panel, so you've got a very one-sided opinion of it.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, the problem is if we start going into what nationalities were the people of the commission, then I think we're playing into there's an agenda thing, and I don't think there is, because
the irony is, though, we do look at getting diverse refereeing teams on match days, and I don't know if it's so much an agenda. I just think there is a lot of groupthink that will go on. You want a diverse panel to see complete the incident from as a diverse perspective as possible, and I do think, if these guys all work together in the Welsh Rugby Union and are, they generally just are spending a lot of time together and see rugby from a similar perspective, I don't know if you're going to get the full picture. And I think that's just a natural thing.
We talk about refs always sort of in the north, they ref differently than they do in the south. They let certain things slide, they let certain things, they crack down on them more. So I agree with Tom, your Welsh Rugby Commission is going to look at things in a certain light, and your Irish Citing Commission will look at things in a different light because of the way that they like to see the game being played and the way that they understand the game.
But if we're saying that a South African can't ref a game where a South African team is playing, then a South African can't sit on the commission where a South African player is being cited.
Oh no, we're not asking for a South African to be part of that commission.
But the rest of the teams are all Northern Hemisphere. So
no, we're talking about one country. Okay. It's one country. I would be more than happy to see an Italian and an Irish person in that citing commission.
An Italian one is an interesting one, especially because you mentioned that he had to defend himself in English. And
this is deep in the X universe, because a lot of information wasn't released. Okay. But there were guys saying that after they announced that someone confirmed through the URC committee that there was no other evidence than what we had seen. The fans had seen, and then the deep dive happened into that, and more questions were posed to the committee. And one of the things, apparently, what one guy was able to ascertain was that the hearing was held in English.
Let's look at the flip side of this. Is the only way to prove intent to actually see the hand in this instance, or is the unnatural arm movement already enough of a sign of intent? Because I mean, we had the case with Adrian Strauss and that player from Tonga,
Samoa, I think.
Where I mean,
you could see it.
You could see everything. The whole picture was there, so intent was easy to prove.
This is why you have these hearings, right? And I think that's what makes it so disappointing as a rugby fan. That at the end of the day, though, I mean, let's put it outside of rugby context. If someone, I think there's a very common defense as I did it by accident. I think that's a common defense that in a lot of scenarios we'd probably laugh at in scenarios. So if you look at it again, just look at the type of defense that he's made, allegedly. It is not, I can imagine it not coming across in a hearing. And unfortunately, the balance of play is, as you said, in these, once you've been cited, essentially it's prove us wrong. And he hasn't been able to do that. And if you look at just the arguments, I think it's a way stronger argument if a player who reacted in that way says, this guy grabbed me by the nuts.
Yeah.
It hurt, or I was shocked, and that's why I reacted the way I shocked. And the other person's defense is, sorry, man, was an accident. I just do think there is, it is questionable. I'm playing devil's advocate here, but yeah.
No, I think that's right, because it is, we do also have to put ourselves in the seat in the seat of these commissioners who then they get brought the evidence, and our assumption is they are neutral. And like you said, the excuse of saying I did it by accident, you then have to put the unnatural hand movement ahead of it. Then things start looking a little bit bleaker.
I think something that's maybe interesting to consider is every time we look at that incident happen, we watch it in slow-mo.
Yeah.
And when you actually watch it at full speed as it occurred, to to go up, grab somebody by the nuts, and then twist whilst his head is on the other side of the body. He can't even see Murphy. I just can't see there being that much time for it to be an intentional let me grab and twist.
Yeah.
I can see an accidental press and squish, if you may, but whether he did it or not is not really what's up for debate. What is up for debate is the way it's being handled, and the way it's being handled is a farce.
Yeah, and then also the argument that he gets a reduced ban from the most serious, and then the reduced ban is 9 games. I just think if you're going to use reduced bans and you're going to use players' track records, and you've got someone with a squeaky clean track record, and you're going to give him 9 games, I don't think you're using the tool of sort of past.
But they've got rubrics for that, so they go, okay, mitigation is 3 weeks, so 3 weeks is reduced.
Yeah, but I'm questioning whether that tool, that rubric, works then, because if a player is going to get 9 weeks. But for a first offense,
he didn't get. It's the type of offense that gives him the 12 weeks, and there's no specific genital.
No, but that's what I'm saying. I just
like bringing the game into disrepute, and like doing something specifically like against the game's intentions.
That's what I'm questioning. I'm saying if unless there's completely conclusive evidence, i.e., video evidence of him doing this, the assumption must be okay. Like it is his first ever offense. It's his first ever citing thing. 5 games or 3 games, and then you're sitting here and going, you know what? I guess.
But even then, it's still fast. I mean, the big point that you made at the beginning of the conversation is that Murphy is gotten off scot-free. Not only has he not got any sanctions, he doesn't even have a red card to his name anymore.
Yeah.
And if this incident with Jan Hendrik Wessels is not the case, if he didn't actually do anything that was claimed by Murphy, he's got that on record for the rest of his career.
Yeah.
He is the tolly tosser. It's quite a heavy allegation to make, and without there being any evidence, it's pretty severe.
Yeah. I think to wrap this up, lot made about a little. This could have gone away very easily, because I think the things that happen in a ruck, in a scrum, are not as above board as sometimes I think rugby fans or the rugby players even like to admit.
Sorry, just another thing with inconsistencies, because we were talking about it. There was a case in the URC with Scarlets versus Dragons where Moriarty got hit in the face by Sione Califano or something like that. And he for retaliation got he hit the guy in the face, soft hand in the face. He got a retaliation ban and suspension. It was suspension, right? He got mitigation because of being provoked into that situation, but he still got a sanction. So why is it different for Murphy? And those are the questions that we asked, right?
Yes. All right. I think we're wrapping up.
Big loss for the Bulls, and just to say, big loss for the Bulls and the Springboks.
Yeah. And I think understandable that Rusty's obviously so frustrated. Right, let's go into round 5 of the URC. Just recap some of the results that happened. Started off on Friday with a Glasgow victory over the Bulls, 21-12. That was a game that Jan Hendrik Wessels obviously couldn't partake in. The Bulls were in that game for a while, but Glasgow at home, just the stronger team. The one that we're going to quickly just spend a bit of time on is the Lions beating Ulster. Was it the Lions finding their stride, or did Ulster struggle in the conditions? A little bit hot, obviously altitude.
I think it's a bit of both. Look, first of all, Ulster, I would argue anyone can look at Ulster's start to the season, and in hindsight, everyone thinks they're amazing, and look at all these players that emerged. But if you look at it, if you told me before that they would have started the way they started, I think it's fair to say maybe they just ran out a bit of steam after a fantastic start to the season. And it is a longer season, you know. I think these off games, I don't think they would have. They probably would have at the beginning of the season looked at the Sharks and the Lions games and gone, okay, well, we fancy ourselves against the Lions. Sharks might be a bit more difficult, but it's turned out to be exactly the opposite. Yeah. But yeah, I think it's maybe Ulster just running out of a little bit of momentum and steam after like a fantastic first few weeks of the tournament, and then I think the Lions finally just clicking a little bit and exploiting sort of tired legs in the last sort of 10, 15 minutes, I would say.
Yeah.
No, definitely just a bit of fatigue on Ulster's side. I mean, they still played very well. I mean, what was the score? It was
49-31. So
it's a very high-scoring game for both sides. So it's not like they didn't have a platform to build off of. I think just in the end, it was pretty neck and neck for most of the game. And at the end, the Lions managed to score, I think, in the 75th minute and then in the 79th minute, 80th minute or something like that. So 2 quick tries right at the end sort of skewed that scoreline a bit, which is not representative of what the game was really like. It was a lot closer.
Yeah, absolutely. Considering where they are, the Hollywood Bets Sharks are glad that they got their first win against the Scarlets, 29-19.
I have a minor bone to pick with Klaus off because I wasn't here last week for last week's episode. Neil Powell, Plumtree, and JB Peterson need to go away for a long time and think about what they do in rugby, because I think Neil Powell's a big part of the problem. The decline of the Sharks, if you look back at where they were and you look at where they are now, Neil Powell's name is in the mix there along with Plumtree. I think they need to toss out the whole rugby fraction. And there has been rumors now. The first rumors, pretty reputable rumors, albeit rumors that they've been asked to kind of present what they're doing at and try and pretty much fight for their jobs.
Yeah.
And even this performance against the Scarlets was not good.
The reason I say Neil Powell is the only one there that still has any sort of clout is because the Sharks were already going down when Sean Everett was coaching them. And then Plumtree came in and it's gotten worse, progressively worse. And then only did Neil Powell come in when as director. So he's been there the shortest out of all of them. And that franchise is just completely tanked.
That's why I just think I think that whoever's the consortium that kind of runs them, I do question whether or not maybe there's decision makers that aren't rugby people there. I can't prove this at all, but it often is the case when there's big money that comes into sports, particularly from regions outside of the sort of the general rugby playing or that code playing setup. Often guys do come in and they're like, we'll throw money at the problem. We're your investors. We trust you. Let's go. And often because they lack the understanding or really, the Sharks, albeit last season had still got to the semi-finals and he can possibly just on Springboks alone get it across the line somehow this year. But if you look at that franchise, there's no progress whatsoever on a rugby playing front. And I don't know if they need to not maybe just gut it and start again.
But that's why I would also take a little bit of responsibility off of Neil Powell's shoulders in the sense that he's the director, he's not the coach. He's not making coaching decisions. Maybe he needs to be more involved in that aspect of it. But if you look at the franchise in terms of like players that they've acquired and stuff like that, there have been some great players.
There was a stint when Neil Powell coached the Sharks too, and I think that was what Dom was. Yeah. He was interim.
No. Yeah. I just think I don't think anyone there moves roles or does anything that saves. I don't see how anyone from inside that organization, as it's currently set up, fixes it. Yeah. That's all I'm saying. I'm not blaming Neil Powell for everything, but I do think you are culpable. If it's not for a lack of him getting the good players, because we would argue the signings have been smart and astute a lot of the time, albeit also big signings. If you can't criticize him there, fair enough. You do have to ask about the connection between the work he's doing and how that translates into the first team, which I think a director of rugby is very responsible for. So I think it's damning now, and it's actually become a bit of a laughingstock. And it's exactly the opposite of what we all thought would happen with the Sharks, considering the setup. And that's why I would honestly, I don't know. We'll get into our predictions, and then I'll speak a bit more about this. But I don't know if you can. I think rugby is a very difficult sport to kind of pull the rug from under a team mid-season. I think in football you can kind of do it. It's 11 guys, go and let them do their thing, and often there's a new manager bounce in football. But I think in rugby it's a bit more difficult to kind of say, listen, guys, this is not working, and start again mid-season. But we'll have to see what happens.
Some other results from the weekend. Leinster with a resounding win, 50-26 over Zebre. Stormers continue their unbeaten run, 31-16 away to Benetton. Very good victory, I think, for them.
Taking a bit of a loss with losing Willemse there.
Yes. Yeah. We'll discuss that in how it affects the Springboks.
Massive shout out to... There's a forward coach at the Stormers now. I don't think he's new, but I think he's been elevated in his role. The forward performance by the Stormers to the start this season. Everyone talks about their exciting backline and the fireworks. their forwards have been unreal, and off the back of that, their defensive structures have been fantastic. And so shout out to that. And now you're starting to see some fantastic props emerge from that side. Porten getting a call up for the Springboks as well. So
Sunday.
yeah, very good.
Dragons racking up the draws in the URC. 19-19 against Ospreys. They've now drawn twice.
I think it's after we criticized them for being so shit last year, they were like, watch the space.
Munster also unbeaten in an Irish derby against Connacht, 17-15. Very close that game.
A lot closer than I would have predicted.
Seems like it looked like Munster's depth maybe got them over the line in that game, because Connacht really are playing well this season. I think they're a force to be reckoned with. And in the final game of the weekend, Cardiff eked out a win against Edinburgh. I think that could have been tipped as the game of the round.
For sure, yeah.
2019. Edinburgh raced ahead in that game and then just couldn't convert into a victory. Cardiff playing really well this year as well. I'll run you through the log. Stormers and Munster both on 23. Glasgow and Cardiff both on 20. And then it goes Ulster, Bulls, Leinster, Lions. That's the top 8. And then Zebre, Benetton, Edinburgh, Connacht, the Sharks, Ospreys, Dragons, and Scarlets. Scarlets still with 0 points. It's only 5 games in, but we're in at the first sort of interval of the URC. Who's making the top 8 first from the South African teams? And then what's a little bit of a surprise factor? Who can get in there that we didn't think would get in there? And who's going to win it based solely on the first 5 matches?
I think the South African franchises that will make it to the top 8 are the same as which made it last year: Stormers, Bulls, and the Sharks. I see the Sharks as having a better second half of the season. I think eventually they'll be able to, as you say, with all of their Springboks, they will eventually be able to win stuff, not nicely and not pretty, but I think they'll get into the top 8. The Lions is just, we don't have depth. So if we start getting injuries in the latter stages of the tournament, I think that's when we're really going to start struggling. But always in with a bit of hope.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also think the way the tournament is set up helps a team like the Sharks, because when the Six Nations starts, the Sharks have a lot of there's no Springbok rugby, so the Sharks pretty much have Springboks with them all the time.
Yeah.
And the Six Nation teams lose players, get players back, players get injured, blah blah. So that kind of suits the Sharks. I agree. I said I was going to mention it. I just think either the Sharks have to start getting better, or there will be a change. And I think when there is a change, you'll probably in coaching setup, I think you'll see a very big new manager bounce, as they call it in football, because I just think you can't keep that amount of pedigree quiet. For some reason, Plumtree's been able to do it, but I don't think so. So that's why I predict the same. Stormers, Bulls, and the Sharks will sneak in there at the end.
I actually think the Sharks will miss out on a top 8 spot, just because not for the Lions, but I think there's other teams this year that are going to put in a little bit, put up a hand and get in there. I think Benetton, Edinburgh, even Connacht, all those 3 are currently also outside the top 8, and I think are playing much better than the Sharks, even though the results haven't gone their way. Any surprises that we think are going to get into the top 8?
I honestly, when I knew you were going to ask this question, I think this year I'm pretty comfortable in predicting 3 Irish teams, 3 South African teams, and Cardiff and Glasgow. That would be my prediction. And unfortunately, it's a bit standard and par for the course. But I honestly think that's what's going to happen.
I think Edinburgh is gonna make it in. I don't see 3 Irish teams making it. I think Connacht will maybe fall short. I think it's going to be. Damn it! Now I'm painting myself in a corner.
Now the Sharks look a little bit tough to get in there.
No, the Sharks can't make it. Surely not. I've miscalculated here. I've been working off 9.
You just want everyone to get a medal.
No, because I mean, so the top 2 contenders currently are Stormers and Munster, and I don't see them slowing down. They're doing so well, both of those franchises respectively. So I do see them probably like finishing top of the log.
Yeah.
Either one of the 2. Connacht, I don't necessarily see Connacht making the top 8.
Okay.
And maybe the Sharks don't make the top 8 either.
Yeah.
And then Benetton slides in there, Cardiff slides in there, and with a little bit of luck, maybe Edinburgh has a better second half of the season and they manage to slide in there as well. Because they do have good players and they do play some good rugby.
Edinburgh's problem is maybe the lack of larger squad depth. So when you take those Scottish players out that are going to Scotland, back from Scotland and stuff, it's extremely disruptive for them. I feel like that definitely hurts an Edinburgh versus maybe a Munster, versus a Munster or Leinster, just because they have way bigger depth. But yeah, I mean, I love Edinburgh. It would be cool to see Edinburgh get squeak in there. But I don't know. I just think particularly also with the fact that Leinster haven't started as great, they're gonna inevitably get stronger. So you Edinburgh and these teams that are also outside of that top 8 at the moment are gonna have to essentially go pound for pound with Leinster to get into that top 8, because we would have thought that Leinster would be comfortably up there now, and they haven't started the season that well. So I think that's the weird sort of imbalance in the dynamic this year of the log early on.
Yeah. Early favourites to win the thing. I'm obviously going to say the Stormers.
I think there's no doubt that I think the Stormers have a very realistic chance, just based off the way that their play has matured. I think we often talk about forward packs and in combination with defense winning you tournaments sort of into the knockout phases. And I think they've shown more of that this season, combined with a very exciting backline. So I think they definitely have the team and the play to do it, but I think the key is going to be where you're playing that final. And I think if the Stormers get to a home final, I would put a lot of money on them doing it, just because of the Cape Town crowd as well. And South African teams just traditionally have performed well when we've had home finals. And I think that'll be the key. And I think it'll be between Munster and the biggest thing to watch is who finishes first and seconds between Munster and Stormers.
Munster have beaten the Stormers in Cape Town a few times, I think, now. So even if it is in Cape Town, I think
not in a final, no.
Munster.
No, Stormers beat them in the final.
Yeah.
Right.
It would be a 2022 repeat, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that exactly what it was?
Yeah.
So
right, Klaus,
bring it on. Yeah.
What do you think?
I'll say the same thing.
Okay.
I think the Stormers versus Munster, and then I'm not even too fussed about the home or away. I think at this point it's just who's better on the day.
But we travel poorly.
No, but
Like,
Stormers has travelled well.
Yeah, but look at who they've played.
Hey.
No, it's fine. Credit where credit's due. You still have to win those games, but like you haven't played a Munster away from home.
No.
And another big thing is it's crazy that we talk so clearly and so confidently about Munster and Stormers with like Leinster not even in their stride yet.
Glasgow.
And Glasgow not really in their stride yet. And the Bulls under a new coach.
You just can't leave the Bulls.
And the Lions maybe as well.
We're talking about a three times in a row finalists. I mean, you can't discount
but I mean,
them.
a lot has changed at the Bulls. I don't think the Bulls are close to the semi-finals this year.
You don't think so?
No.
That's quite a call.
They've also got a couple of injuries of their key players like
Ulster
Cameron
and Cardiff
Honeycomb.
are closer than the Bulls.
Okay.
All right.
I think Ulster and Cardiff are closer than the Bulls.
Yeah, to the semi-finals.
Okay. I
bombshell-
can't talk to you anymore.
On that bombshell, time to leave the URC behind.
Klaus is criticizing you. He thought there was 9 teams in the playoffs. So I don't know why.
Klaus wants to get as many teams into that top 8 as he
I
can.
know it's the top 8, but I was just like one.
We'll just do a round of 16.
2.
Right. The URC is taking a break because the autumn internationals are around the corner. There was one game played already. I don't know if it actually falls into the official window of the autumn international. Japan played Australia in a very tightly contested game.
Yeah.
I think 1915.
Yeah.
Something like that. That was the result.
Short 13 changes to that Australian side. Both locks getting injured within the first 20 minutes for Australia. So I think on the surface you're like, oh wow.
Yeah.
But I think there was a lot of permutations there. The conditions were terrible as well. This game did not fall under the international window, and neither does the game this weekend. Yeah, interestingly, officially. And that's why Australia now will play England with a weakened side, no premiership sides. The English have paid off the clubs to let them release their players.
Yeah.
The Australians have refused to do that.
I think Australian rugby.
The clubs have refused to pay.
Australia has refused
Australia's
to pay.
just back into the black numbers there, so they can't fork out cash to release any players. So that obviously will impact your guys' prediction for the England-Australia game, I assume.
Yeah, of course. You've got to think that
Iki Tau. Who are the players? Iki Tau that are playing for Premiership sides. Iki Tau, O'Connor. So it's big names. It's not small boys.
Yeah.
I just want to say right off the bat that I think this November Autumn International Series is more important than usually. I think, a lot of times you see teams experimenting with new players, bleeding new guys, debuts. This time it's about getting up on the log in terms of like the rankings, because at the end of the year we have the draw for the World Cup. So I think this international series is going to be a lot different to what we used to, and that's going to make it really interesting. That first game with Australia and England is obviously going to be considered a warm-up game for both of those teams, but the English want to get their guys test match fit.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think it was so important for Borthwick to get those guys back into the team. But for Australia, I don't think it matters as much coming out of the Rugby Championship just a month ago. And then, as you say, they don't have money. So
yeah, I saw. I shared a tweet by the guy, but I read an interesting article. The guy writing about Australian rugby and how important, to sort of summarize Joe Schmidt's time and this year for Australia, how important it is. I think they've won 5 out of 12 test matches this year, I think was what he said. And if they don't go on to win sort of 3 out of the upcoming 5 games, I think, 4 or 5 games, then all of a sudden a year that looked quite promising maybe is not as promising as they thought. So there's not a lot on the line, like you said. And I think the same can be said for South Africa and actually all the sides going into
all
this.
of them, yeah.
So I think we're all tending a little bit to England just because they have more superstars coming back. But let's look at the what ifs. If a full-strength Australia team played a full-strength England team with an England team not coming out of playing together, do Australia have a chance?
Yes.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, if you look at just the last 2 test matches against the British and Irish Lions and the way that Australia was playing there, you feel like that tournament would have gone their way had they had a little bit more of a warm-up preceding that tournament. And then obviously they've come on leaps and bounds throughout the Rugby Championship. So going into that game, they would have been hungry, ready, and definitely would have taken that title.
I don't know if it's just my perception of it, also just because I'm a bit more into rugby year on year, but there seems to have been a lot of PR done around the Premiership, and off the back of that PR done to kind of really push sort of the players emerging from the Premiership into that English side, and new guys throwing their name in the hat. And now there's talk of Freeman slotting in at outside centre, which I find is also an interesting thing. But there seems to be a lot of noise around the team. There's also a young winger, 19-year-old, that emerged for the Saracens last week, scoring 5 tries in his debut. They will think he's already better than Cheslin Colby, but that's a conversation for another day. But interesting that that's what I love about also the URC and all these new competitions emerging, is because they kind of force these other competitions into waking up, and it's good, excited. There's nothing like an excited England sports fan.
Yeah,
like force the energy they bring. We don't need to talk about the weight of their opinions and anything, but I love how passionate English fans get about, and it's fantastic for any sport that they participate in.
Yeah, I think the problem with an England sports fan is he'll arrive at any competition believing he can win it.
That's true.
Regardless how much momentum they carry into it. Okay, so England, Australia. I'm torn whether I can. I think I might still pick Australia even with some superstars missing. I want to be on the right side of history here.
Okay.
The biggest game I think of the weekend undoubtedly is Ireland taking on New Zealand
in Chicago.
Absolutely.
In Chicago. I'm actually a bit disappointed that it's in Chicago, but I'm not a fan of these host games in.
There's a lot of Irish. I'm Irish in Chicago, so let them watch their team.
Yeah. New Zealand obviously coming out of the Rugby Championship, same thing as Australia. Ireland not playing together. I can't remember how the last games between these two have shaken out, but I think it's always been very close.
But
they played in Chicago before, yeah?
Yeah,
I think so.
It tends to be a bit of literally. I think the big Irish expat community and the connection of the Irish to Chicago is definitely a factor in it. I think if I remember correctly, the last time we watched them was in last November we were in Edinburgh, and I think I remember the Irish getting it across the line.
I also thought
think
that
so,
was
yeah.
the case.
So
yeah.
I think in recent times the Irish have, which has been part of the noise out of Ireland, and also the world ranking situation, is the Irish have found, I think, were one of the first teams to find a way to start beating the All Blacks regularly, if I remember correctly, over the recent times.
Yep.
So
Given the struggles of Leinster,
true.
and
Given the struggles of the All Blacks.
yeah, but I mean the All Blacks did finish level on points with the team that won the rugby championship. So, I mean,
It's a strange game. I think that makes it hard to predict as well. I think the neutral ground and the where it falls in sort of the test window, I think it does make it difficult in nature to predict. I think the Irish will do it though.
leading the other way.
I think the All Blacks will do
I
it.
think the All Blacks will do it.
I think just having come out of the rugby championship is going to have a massive impact. I think the other teams are going to need like a week or two to just get into their stride. What is interesting about Ireland and also to a certain degree New Zealand is the lack of diversity that they've picked in their squads. Ireland has gone super like traditional with their picks. Maybe due to the fact, as we discussed, at the end of the year, we've got the rankings and the draw for the World Cup, but they've got some aging players,
Right.
like seriously aging players. Even
Dom has been tooting that horn for,
Yeah.
for
They haven't
as
gotten younger.
as long as I can remember.
and like even now, looking 2 years ahead for the World Cup. I was watching a podcast, I can't remember which one it was, and even they were saying, and he was Welsh actually, and he was saying like, this is what happened to Wales before our fall from grace after the 2019 World Cup, and we all know where Wales is currently. So hopefully Andy Farrell doesn't be too stubborn about his selections, and eventually maybe next year starts experimenting with new guys, because it's looking dire for them if those guys start falling away.
All right. Sit up and listen. I'm going to tell you exactly what's going to happen here. New Zealand are going to thump Ireland. They're going to give them a hiding. And considering where Leinster are and how much they're struggling, the whole of Irish rugby is going to be thrown into doubt. And we're witnessing the start of the end, because they're not going to win the Six Nations. France is going to win that. And then there's trouble on the horizon.
I can get behind that narrative.
I mean, it's a fun thought.
Have you seen the jersey that you're wearing?
Ireland.
Where did you get that? I'm kidding.
Edinburgh.
No, I think it's but that is the nature of this constant flux in sort of what people consider golden generations, right? I think you can consider this Irish setup for now the golden generation, and to a large degree the Welsh setup was also, it rivaled some Welsh teams in the 70s and 90s, but the last Welsh setup before the collapse was also considered the golden generation.
Yeah.
And I think that is why we keep talking about these teams being in sort of transition, and we say the same, and I would continue to say the same thing about the Springboks. We'll get into depth there now and what the plan is with the squad. But even there, I look at the team that Rassie has chosen and I go, well, it better fucking work.
Yeah.
Because if it doesn't, I don't feel like there's, the Springboks have depth, but I don't feel like there's guys queuing up, and you losing a golden generation or losing people that have been there for a long time is much more difficult, to kind of fill than just.
You don't feel like there's people lining up for the Springboks?
I don't think, we'll get into it now.
Yeah.
Look at the fullback position, for example. Perfect example. I just, I would still hope as a fan that there's going to be a bit more bleeding of players for options going into the next World Cup than the squad that I see now. And when we looked at the squad going into the rugby championships for the Springboks, we were critical of, I was, and I think generally the consensus was, is there enough new blood here? And we were found out in that first game against the Wallabies, and we managed to turn it around.
Well,
right?
I believe what we said was, are we giving people caps just for the sake of giving them caps, or are we literally trying to bleed new players for positions? All right, quickly, let's just give predictions on the New Zealand Ireland. You say Ireland.
I think Ireland will do
New
it.
Zealand,
New
Zealand. Scotland are playing USA at Murrayfield
I hope
ironic that the US
USA.
US can't even play their own games at home.
No, I hope Scotland swat them aside.
No, of course.
I think would be good. That would be good for rugby.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
Anytime the USA gets beaten, it's good for rugby. Good for anything. Okay, now we're going to get into South Africa, Japan. I think touching on what you said, Dom, the big question that everyone on the South African fan side is asking, if Damian Willemse is indeed injured, which it looked like he is, I don't think he's definitely not playing in the Japan game because they wouldn't risk him. Who's playing fullback? Because there's no out-and-out fullback in that squad.
I think it's relatively easy to answer that question only because of what's happened at club level. I think Edward van der Merwe will slot in there. I don't think Rassie will overlook the fact that Edwards had
I think it might be Sasha.
4 or 5 games. I think maybe that's my.
I don't think it's either of those two. I think
Oh, here we go.
I think it's Curtly Arendse
Okay.
because he often plays fullback for the Bulls.
I think it'll be Edward. But that's my call.
3 experts sitting on this couch. To be fair
Who knows?
to anything, I think the 3 players we've just mentioned, probably just because we have mentioned them, now have no chance of getting into that team because that's the way it has gone in the
can put
past.
Marnie in the
Jesse
back.
Creel will play at the back, yeah. I think
Okay,
it's,
so it just shows
There's diversity.
there is diversity. It ties in a little bit to what you're saying, but not really. This is, I think, what Rassie aimed to build with the squad is always that there is someone who can cover. But I know what you mean when you say there's not. We do have good fullbacks, and now we mention him quite a lot. Is Kieran Horn, who hasn't been really given the chance. And the question is,
when does he get his chance? If he is going to
get his chance.
And I think just to round off my argument on the whole squad, the thing is, you can keep picking people like Dialendi, you can keep picking people like Jesse Creel, you can keep picking all these legacy guys, I'll call them. I don't want it to sound like it's not criticism. Legacy in this case doesn't mean the negative sense. It's just the guys that have come through in the last 2 World Cups. You can keep picking them based off the fact that they will maintain their levels. That's my whole point. But as players age, inevitably levels do drop, right? And that's just what I'm saying. I'm not saying the squad these guys aren't good enough now, but I'm already, wrongly, I'm already in 2027, and I'm asking myself if these players who still form such a large part of the squad are going to maintain those levels. And when the day comes where, and look, he has phased out a couple of the guys by the looks of it now, like your Mbonambis and your Kochs and whatever that have gone. I would argue the front row looks the most healthy in terms of options. But I do question, and when someone like Dialendi, just because of his age or because of injuries or whatever, is no longer able to even mix it in the Springbok setup, do we really think there's enough guys that would have been battle-hardened to take over and contribute? And that's my question.
I think what he's trying to achieve now is with these legacy players, as you would like to call them, he's managing their time. So he's trying to balance out the amount of game time that they get with the game time that he gives the newer guys, the new guard coming through.
Yeah, I think it is. I completely agree with that. I think it's tough to drop guys immediately, so you have to sort of phase them out, and new guys coming in need to play with established player in a system and need to play in a successful system if they want to grow. So I think because you mentioned him a few times, I think Damian Dialenda, Jesse Creel, you could argue that the locks, I mean, Eben Etzebeth is up there in age, but they're still performing at a level where they're not costing the team. I know what you mean when you say, what's the plan for 2027? Because you can't play the 2023 squad in 2027. I would hope, and my expectation is that next year you'll see them playing maybe a few games less, and then you'll see the let's say 4 or 5 aging players that will still come to the World Cup, but that will form more of like a experienced foundation as opposed to being the actual superstars of that team.
And I think you guys mentioned, I think the deciding factor here is that draw on the 12th of December or whatever it's going to be for that World Cup. I think there is just no wiggle room for us to slip up. And I haven't looked at the permutations, but I would imagine if we end up getting beaten by Ireland and France,
then we're in a group with fucking Fiji and Scotland again.
Exactly. And I think having it in our own hands is something that we're going to really try and slam home.
I mean, I've predicted the downfall of Irish rugby. If they beat us in a few weeks' time, then that'll be a nice snippet to look back on. Anything else on the South Africa-Japan game? I mean, all credit to Japan, but it's not. It's a little bit of a tune-up game. It's at Wembley.
Interesting stadium as well. I coming back to your point, I very, very, very much hope Sasha Feinberg and Ngomazulu goes nowhere close to that 15 jersey, because I just
we cannot have a fear of him getting injured just when he plays.
No, I don't want him to get. It's not the injury thing. I just think he's so good at 10, and he's a little bit wet behind the ears still. Like, I think, he needs game time at 10. So I hope and it's these games exactly where I think he'll just continue to show, play with the sort of confidence and kind of level that we expect from him. So I do hope that he starts at 10.
I really do think that either Chesn Colby or Curtly Aronson will be playing 15. So I'm not really worried about what
you don't think Edwall is in there at all?
Not at 15. I've only seen him play 15 for the Sharks, and that's nothing to go by. So
okay, listen,
I don't know if that's...
We need to make a concerted effort to get this podcast out toot sweet, because if we get it out too late and the squads have been announced, then we look like we're sitting here with egg on our face.
Might happen.
All right.
Since it's traveling week, I think Rassie will wait a little bit longer. So I think it'll be announced on Thursday.
The nice thing about this series now is it's going to be a great test of North versus South. To see, where was the rugby championship at in comparison to the rest of the world. Obviously, against France is going to be the major sort of test. Yeah. Ireland is obviously going to be a big test as well for both South Africa and for New Zealand. And then Australia is obviously going to prove themselves that that their level that they played at the rugby championship was something that they can sustain overseas as well. So I think if Australia and New Zealand start struggling in the North, it's going to be very, very telling signs that their isolated tournament, i.e. Super Rugby, is not benefiting them in the slightest in terms of international rugby. Maybe for rugby championship, but not international. And us playing in the URC and getting exposure to the North is really benefiting us in stark comparison.
Yeah. I believe that wraps it up for this week. A lot of stuff to touch on. Next week we'll dissect week 1 of the Autumn International Series and look ahead to the big game thereafter that we're actually going to when we play France in Paris.
France.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Get involved in the comments if you disagree with anything. I think specifically with the Jan Hendrik Wessels ban. I think that is controversial and leaves a lot for fans to discuss. And obviously what you think of our predictions for the URC top 8 and the winners of it all.
If you did like the show, please follow, subscribe.
Thank you very much, and see you next week.